Fight, fight, fight!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to No Filter Gen Z. My name is Camden. This is Lydia and Elijah, and we are young Americans who are fighting to defend the truth. And one of the most important truths that's being twisted today is really masculinity. I mean, there's a lot of things that are wrong in the culture today, like what they see as opposite of what is biblical and what God sees and what God created. But masculinity is something that's really being attacked, I feel like, in the last 20, 30, 40 50 years with the feminist movement and with a lot of things that are not even pro women or pro men. It's kind of just hatred in a lot of ways. And some of it, of course, was good, but a lot of it was unnecessary and stuff that are making men feel like they're not good, they're not needed, they're not wanted. Something that I've seen myself from, a lot of college age women. They're all like, we hate all men, Lydia, not you, hopefully. But
No,
you know what I'm
definitely not.
talking about. So let's just start with that, and we'll get into some things that make men good or bad and what fearless masculinity really is. So, Lydia, what do you think first is going on in the last few decades with this stuff?
Honestly, I don't even know what's going on anymore. I mean, the stuff that comes out when you see, especially like men and women's sports, like at the college level, to make that relevant to your point, and it's just it happens all the time, and it's not surprising now, but it is really crazy how the script has been completely flipped on how womanhood is being defined based on if people are actually a man or not, or gender, and oh, if that's assigned at birth or if it's not, kind of thing. And so I think it just goes to show how slowly our decline has been from biblical principles and truths. And I think
Yeah.
we're getting back to the core of what we need to be at in this situation. But still, I mean, again, we live in a fallen world. We will never 100% truly mend and heal the societies thinking in that way. We can, share the truth to a lot of different people as far as what gender actually looks like and what it means, and how you are the gender that God has assigned you at birth, and that's what it is. And I won't deny that gender dysphoria and things like that are real, because they are, and people do struggle with those things. But that is the root of that is the enemy has gotten a foothold in that person's life, and he has lied to that person of who they are. And everyone struggles with different sins and vices in their
Mm-hmm.
life, and sometimes for some people that is gender identity issues and sexuality. And so I think that we really do have to pay attention to what that looks like and why it's happening, because it is a spiritual attack. And I think that once we continue to get back to these principles, and I feel like we are on the right track in a lot of places, but again, as I said, it's not ever going to be 100% fully restored and mended that way.
Yeah, a lot of it comes from the way that it's so casual now. Like anything
Mm-hmm.
love is love. You can feel what you feel and you're justified in that. And that can go in it can go really seriously and continue until it becomes something with, pedophilia and stuff eventually, if we're just going to say that you can do what feels good and stuff like that, then it's not a great trajectory for the future. But a lot of it with men has been flipped on top of it. Like what men are supposed to be, what God calls them to be, is now seen as toxic and seen as things that are not good. And really, it's the opposite, because what is celebrated now is perversion of what God made of genders and roles for men and women. So Elijah, what's your overall thoughts about that whole thing with the feminist movement and with men and how they're viewed now?
I just think it's more so on the media and the government um, pushing this agenda. The way I see it, they're trying to make men women and women men, and there's
Yeah.
a reason for that. Women are not as physically strong as men, and so when you don't have a strong army who can fight back against the government, you have a media filtering the information that they want to hear and getting people all pissed off and stuff like that, whatever way they want. And then you have weak men at home who don't even know what gender they are, and
Mm.
they don't know what a strong man looks like. They don't want to be a strong man. They just want whatever's comfortable. then you get a weak society that's easy to control and manipulate. And that's what I
Mhm.
think is exactly going on.
Yeah, I always wondered like why they're doing that because it's so obvious what they're trying to do and reversing everything what it's supposed to be. And I guess that's a good point with the military. And what I always thought is you take men away, that leaves the women and children vulnerable to attacks. Because if you don't have the strong men protecting them, providing like they're supposed to, then women can be, taken advantage of and deceived and all sorts of things that are from the enemy, like Lydia said. And it is a big spiritual thing. It's a whole war going on that we don't even see in the flesh. And I think this is one of the biggest wars of our generation, of our time, is this stuff with gender and roles and identity, because 30% of our generation is LGBTQ. A lot of them are confused and we're the most anxious, depressed generation. I think it comes from our lack of identity and knowing who we are. And that really stems back to Christ and knowing who he says we are, because that's where we really get our identity. But when it pertains to men specifically, uh, Elijah, me and you, I feel like we're conservative men that are a lot of society would say we're toxic because we want to provide for a woman, because we want to be the one that takes the lead and does the things that God really designed us to do. And it's all twisted. But Lydia, you're a woman, so what's your um, perspective and what do you look for in a godly man? Because you are a conservative, like godly woman, and a lot of our generation is not super like that, and I think we need more of people like you and me. So what do you look for?
I mean, I definitely, I hold to the idea of, men leading the home. And that does not mean that men are more important than women. That's not what that is. We are both just as valuable, just in different ways. And so
Exactly.
I see nothing wrong with that. And I do want a man to spiritually lead my household. Like, I do not want to be the one to have to take the brunt of that. Of course, I'm going to help with that, but that's not my responsibility to head that up every time that it needs to happen, and it needs to happen all the time. So having that constant spiritual leadership, I definitely desire and I look for, in future partner.
Yeah.
um yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. But I think I do agree with you that society and just the feminine movement has just twisted that as like saying, like, I'm going to be the breadwinner. I'm going to be the one. I don't need a man, and that kind of where. And I think we've gotten off track to the point of, it's like the girl boss thing. Like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm going to start my career and
Strong,
do all this, which,
independent woman.
yes. And the thing is, and I will note this with just the career aspect, you can, if you are called in a certain sphere of, career aspirations, you can still do those things, but you can also do those things as being a mother and a nurturer and, having children and growing a family. So you can have both. And again, I think those are a lot of times in different seasons of your life.
Mm.
And because God definitely calls many different women to many different things. And so I think, but then that's where the feminist movement has gotten so off track, where they're like, we don't need kids and all of this. And so that
Mm.
is why birth rates have gone down. And
Yeah.
that's why we're dealing with things like that, because society and just American culture has just pushed that so much onto women. And there's a lot of women that they would much rather stay at home, and they don't even want to have a career outside of being a mother, which a mother, being a mother is a job in of itself.
It's
And
a
so
full-time job. It's the most important job in the world.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, I definitely do have aspirations in the political sphere and things like that, but I also at the same time, I want to have a spouse and have a family. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah,
But
and what you
yeah.
said with seasons is important too. It's like there's different seasons for everything. It says in Ecclesiastes, maybe 3, that there's a time and a place for everything, and
Yeah.
there's a season for everything. So I think that one, being a mother is the most important thing any woman could ever do, and maybe not everyone is called to that, but for those that are, should not feel like it's not enough, because I feel like our
Mhm.
culture nowadays says like just a mom. Like that's the worst way to put it, because it's the most
Yeah.
important thing in the world. So I hate that it's become like that. But the traditional family unit even is becoming a thing that is like not super
Thing of the
common
past.
nowadays. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think also you said birth rates are declining, but also divorce rates are up. And I think it's for the same
Mhm.
reasons. Is women are saying we don't need men, and when they're in relationships, they're trying to be the man as well. And I think the man and men in general can't be who they are, and they can't, and a woman can't be who they are if they're both not on the same page with becoming one like God originally designed. Because if you think about it, you literally become one when you get married. When you commit to someone for the rest of your life in a covenant like that, you physically become one, you spiritually become one. And it's something that we don't take heavy enough, I feel like, in our generation. It's even like hookup culture and stuff. It's just so casual now that we're making it a thing that is not as meaningful. And that's where Satan thrives when things get twisted like that. Elijah, any thoughts on stuff we just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think another aspect is that a lot of women, Christian women that I know, will get divorced because they believe God's calling them to something different, which is absolutely insane to me because when you think about it, when two become one, you both get one calling.
Yeah,
God would
you're
not
doing everything
call,
together.
yeah, God would not call a man to do one thing and then his wife to do a completely different thing, like travel across the world and do something else where the man is not going to be with you. He
Mm.
calls you to the same exact thing because you are supposed to complete each other spiritually. Where one lacks, the other picks up. And I think people have forgotten that, and that's where a lot of successful Christian marriages come from. And when you think about it, Christian marriage is a Christian thing, and
Yeah,
I mean marriage is the only thing that gets upheld when it comes to Christian households. Like Christian households are the only ones that you see really. I mean, there's exceptions outside, but mostly Christian households are the ones who are married after like 80, 90, even if it's like, a more lax Christian household. But if you have those Christian values and ideals, you tend to have a much better and stronger marriage.
yeah, and like Lydia said, with how men are not better at everything, women are better at some things, and men are better at some things, and that's where you actually do become one because a man is not complete without a woman, just like a woman is not complete without a man. So I'm so passionate about the complete opposite of what the feminist movement says, that you're good by yourself, that you're strong, you can do it all alone. I just don't think either gender can do it all alone. I think we need each other, and that's one of the biggest lies we're being told, is that it's the opposite of that. But um, biblical masculinity, a man and what it's supposed to be, is something that I was so passionate about that I wrote a book about it. And that's, I wanted to talk about it on this show first because I'm doing like a little press tour of speaking and going on podcasts and stuff. And I want to start with this awesome show that we do. This is my book. It's called Fearless Masculinity, and I'll show a graphic as well. But it's about embracing the man that God created you to be instead of being scared of doing that because the culture tells you that it's bad. And I think a lot of things in culture can tell you things that are good are bad and bad are good, especially when we're in an ever-changing society. But the word of God stays forever. It doesn't change. The values always stay, and that's where I get my values. So I wanted to write a book for other men, Elijah, me, that are just as I guess looking for that identity, because in a world that tells you you're toxic for wanting to be a man and provide for a woman and have a family, have kids, and take the lead, it's just being twisted so much to where I had to write a book and say you're not wrong for that. And it's a roadmap to discovering who you're made to be as a man and how to get back to God's design, because it's easy to get off track. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. That's why I wrote a book. It's like a bunch of stuff of my life and how I got to find God and find who I am through him. So that's what it's about. And the main point I want people to take from it is that there is a calling for you and there is an identity for you that God has planned. Everyone's created for a purpose, on purpose, and without seeking God in that, you kind of lose sight of the whole thing. And even for women too that want a godly man, it's a great book to find what you should be looking for in a man, because culture will show you the complete opposite, that that guys that, get with every girl is a good thing, but that's not true. There's a way God designed it, and I think that's what I'm trying to lead our generation back to. So if you guys are interested in it, you can click the link in the description and you can get your own copy. Guys, Lydia, Elijah, I have your copy signed. I'm going to give it to you soon. But if anyone's interested, that is what the book is about. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the book? I know you haven't read it yet, but just the concept.
No, I'm so excited for you, and just, your family has to be so proud. We're proud.
Thank you.
No, I love like the cover of the book and how you crossed out toxic and flipped it on its head in that way.
Yeah.
I like that you highlighted that, because I know that's the whole spin. It's, fearless. No, it's not toxic. It's fearless.
Yes.
No, I'm very excited to read. I can't wait to get my signed copy. I'm going to feel very special. But no, and this is really the core of what men in our generation do need to hear, because this is the generation that I think that needs to hear it the most right now. Millennials, sure, too, Gen Alpha, sure, but they're also all very young right now.
Yeah.
But this is the generation, that the next generation that is rising up, and we're young adults now. And so I think it is of the utmost importance that those people, are able to read books like this and read your book itself, and just to hear the truth that's in it. And just, as you said, it is like, it's a roadmap. It helps and guides men as far as, their calling and how they need to be able to lead spiritually in a Christian perspective.
Yeah. And honestly, I just want it to point people towards God, because that is the whole reason why I did it and how I found who I am. It's because of God. So I really hope that whoever reads this does find Jesus through it, because a lot of it is biblical. There's a lot of Bible verses and different interpretations of things that are why we're where we're at, and also what we're supposed to be thriving towards. So that's what my goal is. I really hope people see Jesus through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I also think that you're becoming part of the start of a movement that's being started by our generation to bring back masculine men and feminine women.
Yeah.
And your book's going to be part of the start of that. So, good stuff.
Appreciate it.
Big
Thank you,
thumbs
guys. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I covered it here first, because this show is so important, and it is about our generation. No filter Gen Z. We're trying to flip it, and all the lies that we're told by social media, by our feelings, and by the news, and all these sorts of sources that tell us how we're supposed to be. But it all roots back to what God originally designed, and that's what I really hint at towards the book. So that's what I wanted to get to. But a few things that we got to cover as well in what's going on now. We just had Men's Mental Health Month in June. And so there's a stigma around men that, you can't be emotional, you can't cry, can't do anything because you have to be strong. And that's kind of where my book actually talks about both sides, about, you want to be a strong man, but also you have emotions too. There's a chapter called Jesus Wept, because that's the title of a chapter that goes into how men that have emotions show that they have a heart for people. And yes, you can take emotions out of its context and like get mad and use it in the wrong ways, but Jesus even cried because he cared about people so much. And so that's where it's okay, because you don't want your heart to be hardened. You want it to be open, and he realized that. Jesus realized that, and I think that's why it's the shortest verse in the Bible. It describes itself. Jesus wept. It's a natural thing. It's okay. And men need to know that, yeah, be strong, be a provider, be a leader, but also don't hold it up all inside. Don't build it up, because that will lead to the opposite of anger and things that aren't meant to be. So Jesus wept, and that doesn't mean men can't.
Yeah. Jesus is, the epitome of man, because he was fully God and fully man. So, no, I definitely, and I as a female, like, I don't have a problem with, men showing their emotions that way. I'm going to use my dad as an example. He's going to sure appreciate this, but anytime that, no, anytime that we watch like any movie or, show or things like that, like seriously, like where there's like a father-daughter like trope, like where there's something like that, like he gets very emotional, and he looks at me and I'm just like, I just love you, Lydia, like I and so I think that really goes to show, like what you were talking about, how that shows how for men to show emotion, to cry, like it does show they care about people,
Yeah, it
like they
shows how
care about
much you care.
the people around them. And so I think, my dad, I think, is a great example of that, because he's also a strong leader in the house, but he's not afraid to cry.
Mm.
He's not afraid to cry, and not in the, very emotional, all the time kind of thing. That's not what this is, but there is a
Yeah.
time and place for that. Absolutely. And, when there are hard things that go on in, a man's life, like they should not be ashamed of being able to let those emotions out, because for men and women, if you bottle things up like that, that's not healthy. That's never healthy. And but also then on the other side, the extreme, to not act like a victim in the way that you allow yourself to act based on
Yeah.
situations. Also, you have to be grounded to a certain extent, and that it also goes for women too.
Yeah.
So it's having that balance, but also knowing that emotions are okay, and they're okay to express, and it's okay to talk to people, and it's okay, about what you're going through, because again, bottling those types of emotions up, not even the crying part, but just like sharing what you're feeling, is
Yeah.
also just as important as well. So
Yeah, and the men's suicide rates are crazy. It's like through the roof, insane. And I think there's two main reasons. I think one is the world's telling them that they can't be who they're designed to be, so they're left with all these things they feel like there's no place for them. I think that's one of the reasons. The other one is the thing we just talked about, with men feeling like they can't open up and they can't share anything. So I think it's important to attack both of them and show men that people care about you, and if you have emotions, that's because you care too, and it's okay. But the victim mentality actually leads you to the wrong spot and leads you to get trapped in it, because if you say, like, you're just gonna let this rule your life, like Lydia just talked about, how if you're just always if you're emotional and then you use it to justify things, that will lead you to never getting out of it. And I think that's not what God designed. I think it's actually the opposite. I think we're supposed to learn from things and grow. It says in one of James, I think, that endurance gives your faith a chance to grow, and that's from suffering. So you get through things because of these. So you got to learn from things, but you're never feel like you're alone, because there's a God that created you and loved you so much. So just remember that. Like, I feel like a lot of guys feel like they're completely just alone and unwanted, and just no place for them.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I feel like to the other extent, like, you shouldn't be overly emotional as a man, because you are the spiritual leader and the physical leader of your
Yeah.
household. And so you have to have a level of strength mentally and physically, to where you're not crying after every single thing goes wrong. You're the one
Yeah.
holding your family together. You're the one being that strong head of your household that your entire house is going to look to. You need to be strong for that. And there's a time for crying, of course. There's a time for letting your emotions out, of course. But in general, it shouldn't be a regular, like, everyday thing, because in my eyes, that kind of does show a little weakness in a sense. Not not if you're, saying I love you to your son or your daughter. I completely agree with that. You should be telling your son and daughter that every single day, because that sparks a relationship. That sparks, like, that's how you remind them that you love them. Like, right
Yeah.
before right before I got punished, my dad was always like, I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because it needs to happen. And for some reason, where most kids wouldn't understand that, I did. I don't know why, but I completely understood every single time I was punished. And for the rare amounts I was punished, because I didn't really do too much to get punished, weirdly enough. You can even
I
ask my parents. I don't know.
I think there's a difference between getting emotional and living an emotional life,
Yeah.
Yes.
because everyone is emotional at some point, but what determines, you as a leader, as a man, is, are you going to let that take it? Are you going to let that take you over you, or are you going to, conquer that and
Yeah.
lead your family? Because there are going to be situations, crises, that you have to rise up and not get emotional at times. You got to be the one that just says, nope, we're going to get through this. And you make a way. Because women, of course, they're going to be more emotional, because they're wired differently. You know, their ability to care and nurture and all these things are so just wired so beautifully that it's not a bad thing for them to get emotional, and also for men at times either. But to lead a family, you got to know when to let the spirit lead you and not let your emotions lead you, I think.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And also to note with the women's side of that, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, we are designed differently in that way, and we're also hormonal in a lot of
Right,
ways. And
right.
so, not even to, but you know what I mean? And so, because also we are the ones that carry children and do those things. So, of course, we're going to be more emotional. We're going to be, you know, be able to sympathize with our
Yeah.
children and people easier. Not that it's necessarily hard for men, but it's comes more naturally to us. And so, and the
By
Lord
design.
created that perfect balance between. That's why we complement each other. That's why a man and a man, that will never work
Yeah.
as a marriage, and a woman, because we balance each other out, we complement each other, and there is no other way you can spin that. There's no other way it would work.
You can try
So
to replicate it, but you will never be able to f- connect the puzzle pieces like God designed it. Like we're
yeah,
not God. We can't play that. Like you can try your as much as you can, but it's never going to 100% connect like a man and a woman will. And by the way, that's why that's why they can feed the baby. Literally, because
yeah,
they're built to be nurturing and caring. They have those qualities naturally and biologically, so it just makes sense that they are, with the children, nurturing and caring for them. Because men, I cannot replace a woman. I couldn't do the things a woman can do on that level because they are better at it, you know?
mhm,
And something that is looked at almost like a bad thing now is the order of how God designed a family. Like God over man, man over woman, woman over the children, which it can be construed in a way that looks like it's I don't know, bad of the man to be over the woman, but it's really to protect her
yeah.
and the children and to make sure they have everything they need. Like I hate that it's being distorted so much, like the other way around.
Yeah, I want to be protected.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
who
have a problem
wouldn't?
with that.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, no, I do
It's
not want to be the first line of defense in my household if something were to go wrong
Can you
in multiple
imagine
different
if
ways.
you were and the man was just like really?
No, yeah, that
Or
would
the
be,
boy, sorry, the boy.
yeah, beta man. No, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
This is why this is why I don't understand where we're at right now in the world, but we got to be the ones that turn it around like Elijah was saying. This has got to be a movement. It shows that God's not done with us. We got to fulfill the
Yeah,
roles he made.
Yeah, and everything else
completely
will fall
agree.
into place. Yeah.
Right. It starts with that. And I just saw something about I think I posted it yesterday about kids being more disrespectful in public and why that is today compared to and 50 years ago because marriage is no longer a thing really. There's so many
Mhm.
divorces, single parents. So when you don't have both, you're missing something. The husbands used to be complete providers, like making sure the families have everything they need, and the women used to be nurturing and taking care of the kids, giving them emotionally what they need. Now we don't have those things in a society that normalizes divorce. We're missing, so like the kids are missing one half of who they need to look up to, and I think it's so obvious that that would cause problems. I'm not saying that everyone is perfect and it's never going to be perfect, but I just see it's an obvious cause to certain issues with children. Like if you're missing something, you're not going to know who you are.
Yeah. And again, I'll go back to that's why God's designed with a man and a woman to have that, create that balance in the household, and that's where it begins. And so clearly that's why there's so many issues, because just how the
Anything
nuclear
outside of
family,
God's design will have issues.
it's going to fail. And we see it time and time again. And people have such a hard time being able to see through the lies there. But that's
Yeah.
why people like you writing what you wrote will be able to shed light on that. So,
Yeah, it's just the truth. I'm not even trying to say my opinion. It's just the truth from how God designed things in His Word. So I think when you see an example of it, it works. When you have a man and a woman that stay together and they're a feminine woman and a masculine man that complete each other, it works. The children get what they need. It's by design. So it's just the truth. And I think that the biggest way that the enemy works is by lies and deceiving people. Just like the very beginning, he deceived Eve to eat the fruit and Adam to eat the fruit. So that's where it all began, and it's still the same tricks that the enemy is doing today. It's still deceiving, lying, same stuff. There's no surprise.
Yeah. And another point is like God didn't create or God created Eve for Adam. He didn't create Bob for Adam. He created Eve for Adam. And so, and on top of that, like the second sin ever committed in the world was Eve taking the apple, and then the third going on to Adam eating the apple. But it just goes to show, like, when we want to do something ourselves, when we, like, they both ate the apple because they wanted to have the knowledge of God. They wanted to be equal to God. And so when you don't have that submission under God as a man, and then when the woman doesn't have that submission under a man, you fall apart. Everyone wants to be independent, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, because we're better together, like literally. Yeah. So, yeah. All right, I think we covered everything, guys. Get the book if you haven't already. Go in the description if you're watching this right now and order yours. It's just $20. It's just a $20 bill, and it will change your life. It really will. It says on the back. I said, I'll just read the last line. It says, "So go ahead, decide right here, right now, put it back on the shelf." Or pick it up and never live the same, because you won't be the same after you read this book. It's going to transform your view of how the world is right now. So thank you guys for watching. Click the subscribe button. Thank you, Lydia and Elijah, for joining. And we'll see you guys next week with another episode. Peace.
Bye.